This is the story of the curse of unbelief, a plague that turns doubt into decay, skepticism into walking death. It spreads not through bite or blood, but through the simple act of questioning whether the God Emperor truly watches over his children. In a galaxy where faith is armor and heresy is contagion, the undead shamble through cathedral cities, their putrid mouths still mumbling half-remembered litanies as their bodies betray the Emperor's light. Across 17 sectors, 10 billion corpses now walk the hive spires, and their numbers grow with each whispered doubt. To understand why entire cardinal worlds have become necropolises of the spiritually damned, start at the beginning. The curse of unbelief first manifested during the 41st millennium's closing years, in the shadow wake of the Great Rift's birth. As warp storms carved reality into bleeding fragments, isolated imperial worlds found themselves cut off from the Astronomican's guiding light for months, sometimes years. In that darkness, faith wavered. And where faith wavered, flesh followed with the inevitability of gravity. The first recorded outbreak occurred on Mortis Threnody, a cardinal world whose billion-strong population had maintained perfect spiritual discipline for 3 millennia. The planet's 17 cathedral cities housed the Imperium's most devout citizens, men and women who began each day with 3 hours of prayer and ended it with litanies of thanksgiving. Their faith had weathered demon incursions, heretic uprisings, and the slow grind of endless war without a single recorded instance of spiritual deviation. When the warp storms cleared and Imperial relief fleets arrived 8 months later, they found a planet of walking corpses. The dead still attended morning prayers in perfectly ordered ranks. They still recited the litanies of purity with mechanical precision. They still genuflected at the appointed moments and made the sign of the Aquila with hands that had begun to decompose. But their eyes had filmed over with the gray cataracts of doubt, and their bodies had begun the slow, inexorable process of returning to the dust from which the Emperor had shaped them. In the great cathedral of St. Macarius, 50,000 infected knelt in silent worship, their collective breathing creating a sound like wind through a charnel house. Inquisitor Vex Korath's initial reports, filed under Hereticus Classification Omega and sealed by authority of the Ordo Malleus, described the phenomenon with clinical precision. Subjects retain motor function and speech patterns for 72 hours post-manifestation. Cognitive degradation follows a predictable pattern: first philosophical doubt, then theological questioning, finally complete spiritual apostasy coinciding with full corporeal necrosis. The dead continue to mimic faithful behavior through muscle memory alone, creating the appearance of devotion while serving as vectors for spiritual contamination. The Inquisitor's field notes, recovered from his corpse 3 days later, painted a more disturbing picture. Day 1. Interviewed suspected carriers. All report identical symptoms: sudden inability to feel the Emperor's presence during prayer, followed by intrusive thoughts questioning his divinity. Physical manifestations begin within 4 hours: skin discoloration, temperature drop, muscle rigidity. Day 2. Attempted to administer last rites to 17 individuals. The blessed oils burned their flesh like acid. Their screams contained words in no human language. Day 3. I feel it beginning in myself. The questions come like knife wounds. If he is divine, why does he suffer? If he protects, why do the righteous rot? I will not become one of them. The Emperor protects. He must. He must. Names matter here, because each name decides a fate. The Ecclesiarchy's taxonomists, working from cogitator banks aboard the quarantine vessel Pious Wrath, have identified 7 distinct classifications of the faithless dead, each representing a different stage of spiritual decay. Their research, conducted through blessed vid screens and sanctified atmospheric barriers, charts the inexorable progression from doubt to damnation. The doubters retain most of their human appearance, distinguished only by a subtle graying of the skin and a tendency to pause mid-prayer, their mouths moving soundlessly as they struggle to remember words that once came as naturally as breathing. They represent the curse's earliest stage, when the infected still possess enough self-awareness to recognize their condition. Many attempt to compensate through increased devotional activity, spending 18 hours daily in prayer as they desperately seek to rekindle their dying faith. Their bodies begin to cool, their pulse slowing to half-normal rate, as if their very life force drains away with their certainty. The questioners have begun to rot in earnest, their flesh taking on the consistency of wet parchment, their voices rising in heretical inquiries that poison the air around them. They gather in small groups, their conversations a litany of blasphemous speculation. Why does the emperor permit suffering if he loves his children? If he is divine, why do the righteous die while heretics prosper? What if the golden throne is just a machine and we worship a corpse? Their words carry a psychic weight that can shake the faith of even the most devoted listener, spreading doubt like a virus through sound alone. The mockers represent the curse's most insidious evolution. Still possessed of cruel intelligence, they pervert sacred hymns into blasphemous parodies, their putrid tongues crafting verses that can shake the faith of those who hear them. In the ruined choir lofts of Mortis Threnody, they sing in perfect harmony. Golden throne, golden lie, 10,000 years of watching him die. Corpse God dreams while children scream, nothing's ever what it seems. Their flesh has turned the color of old brass, and their eyes burn with the cold light of absolute certainty in nothing. They seem to take perverse pleasure in their condition, cackling at the desperate prayers of the still living. The deniers have lost most cognitive function, but their bodies continue the mechanical motions of worship even as they rot. They kneel in prayer formation for days without rest, their spines visible through translucent skin, their mouths opening and closing in silent recitation of liturgies they no longer remember or believe. Their movements create a horrible synchronicity, thousands of decomposing forms genuflecting in perfect unison as their minds dissolve into gray static. They feel neither pain nor hunger, existing in a state of spiritual void that somehow sustains their putrid flesh. The blasphemers actively work to spread their condition, seeking out the faithful and whispering poison truths. The emperor is a corpse chained to a chair of gold. Your prayers feed only silence and the laughter of thirsting gods. There is no salvation, only the long dark between the stars. They retain enough cunning to target the spiritually vulnerable. New converts, grief-stricken mourners, soldiers broken by war. Their words carry the weight of terrible conviction, for they speak not from madness, but from the absolute certainty of the damned. The forsaken have passed beyond active malice into simple, inexorable hunger. What remains of their consciousness focuses entirely on consuming the faith of others, drawn to churches and shrines like moths to flame. They tear apart prayer books with their bare hands and devour the pages, seeking some phantom nourishment that their spiritually dead nerves can no longer detect. They cluster around reliquaries and sacred artifacts, their presence slowly draining the holy objects of their power until blessed weapons refuse to fire, and sanctified barriers crack under the weight of accumulated doubt. Finally come the vacant. Zombies in the truest sense, their souls so completely hollowed that only base animal instincts remain. They shamble toward any gathering of the faithful, not out of hunger, but from some echo memory of belonging. Their presence alone enough to cast doubt into the hearts of even the most devoted. They move with the terrible patience of the truly dead, unstoppable and unthinking. Their rotting forms a mockery of the humanity they once possessed. In their vacant eyes, the faithful see a reflection of their own potential fate. On the ground, it reduces to a timetable and a heartbeat. Morning prayers in Hive Secundus begin at 5 o'clock Imperial Standard, announced by the great bell of St. Drusus Cathedral, whose bronze throat has rung unchanged for 4,000 years. The bell's deep voice rolls across the Hive City's cramped levels, calling the faithful to their daily act of communion with the God Emperor. By 5:15, 3,000 citizens have gathered in the nave, their voices joining in the canticle of beginning, their breath creating clouds of vapor in the cathedral's perpetual chill. The faithful arrange themselves in precise rows on worn stone that bears the impressions of 10 million previous genuflections. Merchants kneel beside manufactorum workers, noble-born beside hive scum, all equal in their devotion if not in their station. The cathedral's soaring arches amplify their voices into something greater than the sum of its parts, a sound that seems to make the very air sacred. But today, scattered among the believers like poison in wine, gray shapes kneel in perfect mimicry of devotion. Sister Superior Agatha maintains her vigil from the cathedral's transept, her bolt pistol loaded with consecrated ammunition blessed by Cardinal Voss himself. Her power armor's sensor suite scans the congregation with mechanical precision, its machine spirit programmed to detect the telltale signs of spiritual decay. A merchant's wife in the fourth row pauses mid-recitation, her lips moving soundlessly as she struggles to remember the words to a prayer she has recited every morning for 40 years. A manufactorum worker's skin has taken on the waxy pallor that precedes full manifestation, his eyes growing distant as doubt creeps through his mind like ice water through his veins. The sister marks their positions with tactical precision, her helmet's display updating with threat assessments and firing solutions. But intervention must wait until prayers conclude. Interrupting the liturgy would shake faith more than letting the infected complete their hollow worship. The Emperor's faithful deserve to complete their communion uninterrupted, even if it means sharing the sacred space with the spiritually dead. She whispers a prayer of her own, asking for the strength to do what must be done when the time comes. The infected do not break protocol. They stand when the congregation stands. They kneel when the congregation kneels. They bow their heads when the liturgy demands submission. But their movements lag a half-second behind the faithful, like marionettes operated by a drunk puppeteer. When the time comes to recite the Creed Imperial, their voices create a discord that makes the Gothic arches ring with dissonance. I believe in the immortality of the Emperor and the promise of the throne eternal. They begin, but the word believe emerges as a hollow rasp, drained of all conviction. Around them, the faithful continue their worship, either unaware of the corruption in their midst or choosing to ignore it out of desperate hope that faith alone might prove sufficient. Their voices grow louder, as if volume could compensate for the growing presence of doubt, their prayers taking on an edge of hysteria that transforms devotion into desperation. The cathedral's ancient stones have witnessed such scenes before, but never on this scale. Never with this sense of inevitable doom hanging over the proceedings like incense smoke. The morning service ends at 6:30 with the benediction of the dawn, the faithful receiving the Emperor's blessing for another day of service. They file out in orderly ranks, making the sign of the Aquila as they pass beneath the great doors, their footsteps creating a rhythm like a funeral march. But the infected linger, their dead eyes fixed on the altar as if searching for some sign they know will never come. Their presence profanes the sacred space simply by existing, their doubt radiating outward like heat from a furnace. Sister Superior Agatha descends from her perch, her power armor's servos whining in the cathedral's acoustic vastness. Each step echoes with the weight of duty and the certainty of what must come. She approaches the merchant wife first, drawing her bolt pistol with the practiced ease of long service. The woman looks up with eyes already clouded by spiritual death, her mouth forming words of greeting that emerge as a rattling wheeze. "The Emperor protects," Sister Agatha whispers, and pulls the trigger. The consecrated bolt round removes the woman's head entirely, spattering blessed silver across the pews. The explosive detonation echoes through the cathedral like thunder, and for a moment the very air seems cleaner, as if a source of contamination has been removed. The other infected do not react. They have already passed beyond fear into the gray country of absolute doubt, where even death holds no terror because it promises no salvation. Then there is the moment everyone remembers and no one explains. Sergeant Mordian Cass had served in the Cadian 47th Shock Troops for 19 years without questioning his faith once. He had bayoneted heretics on Vrax Prime, watching their blood steam on his consecrated blade. He had incinerated cultists on Talarn, their screams mixing with their blasphemous prayers as blessed promethium consumed flesh and heresy alike. He had held the line against demon engines on Cadia Prime, standing firm while reality itself twisted around him and the very air bled colors that had no names. His spiritual purity was beyond reproach. The regimental chaplain had marked him for promotion to the Order Militant, noting his exemplary faith under extreme duress in 17 separate combat citations. His personal effects included a rosarius blessed by Saint Celestine herself, a collection of sacred texts annotated with his own devotional thoughts, and letters home that began and ended with prayers for the Emperor's protection. But on the night the curse of unbelief reached Firebase Throne, Sergeant Cass made the mistake of asking a simple question. I am standing in the communications bunker when the Voxcaster crackles to life at 23:47 hours. The reinforced walls around me bear the scars of 3 years of constant warfare. Las burns, shrapnel gouges, and the brown stains of blood spilled in the Emperor's name. Outside, the wind carries the smell of cordite and burning promethium, the eternal perfume of a world at war. The voice emerging from the static belongs to Colonel Strachan, but something in its tone makes my blood run cold despite the bunker's oppressive heat. All units, maintain position. Do not attempt evacuation. Repeat, do not attempt evacuation. The words carry the flat certainty of a death sentence, delivered without emotion or explanation. I check the chronometer. The colonel should be conducting the evening tactical briefing, not issuing orders that sound like final commands. The transmission cuts to static, then returns with a different voice, younger, more desperate, edged with the kind of fear that brave men feel when they realize courage is not enough. This is Lieutenant Voss, 3rd Company. The colonel has... The signal dies entirely, leaving only the white noise hiss of an open channel carrying nothing but electromagnetic ghosts. I adjust the frequency, seeking some explanation for the breakdown in communications protocol. Firebase Throne runs on discipline and routine. Deviation from established procedure is literally a capital offense. Something has gone catastrophically wrong. I key my own Vox unit, following standard emergency protocols drummed into me through 19 years of faithful service. Firebase Actual, this is Bunker 77. Request status update on current operational status. My voice sounds steady, professional, exactly as it should. No response. The static seems to mock me, a whisper of white noise that sounds almost like laughter. I try again, expanding the broadcast radius. Any station, this is Sergeant Cass, requesting immediate support and tactical advisement. The silence stretches for 17 minutes. I count every second on the chronometer, because counting gives me something to do besides think. That's when the doubt creeps in. Not dramatic or sudden, but quiet as a knife between the ribs. If the Emperor truly watches over his faithful servants, why does he permit this silence? If our prayers have meaning, why do they echo unanswered into the dark? The thoughts come unbidden, poison flowers blooming in the garden of my mind. I try to push the questions away, reciting the litany of faith as I was taught in basic training 37 years ago. The Emperor protects the faithful. The Emperor guides the righteous. The Emperor grants victory to those who serve. But the words feel hollow now, just sounds without substance, like trying to fill a bucket with holes in the bottom. The doubt spreads through my thoughts like gangrene through flesh, corrupting everything it touches. The thought takes root in my mind like a tumor, growing with each passing moment of unanswered prayers. I feel my skin begin to itch, then burn, as if my very flesh rejects the poison of my questioning. But once begun, doubt breeds doubt with the inexorable logic of entropy. How many prayers have I offered up during 19 years of service? How many times have I begged for the Emperor's protection, only to watch good soldiers die anyway? How many comrades have I seen fall while reciting the Creed Imperial, their faith intact, even as last fire burned through their hearts? The burning sensation spreads from my chest to my limbs, a fire that consumes without destroying, pain without purpose or meaning. When I look down at my hands that have held blessed weapons, hands that have made the sign of the Aquila 10,000 times, The skin has turned the color of old parchment. The flesh feels cold despite the burning, as if my body temperature is dropping even as internal fire consumes me from within. I key the Vox one final time, my duty to report overriding my growing horror at what I am becoming. My voice emerges as a croak, already changing as my throat dries and my vocal cords begin their slow decay. If anyone can hear this transmission, be advised that faith is not enough. It was never enough. We're dying down here, and the golden throne is silent. The words taste like ashes in my mouth, and I know that I am already dead, that some essential part of me has flickered out like a candle in a hurricane. But still I continue transmitting, because the truth demands to be spoken, even by the damned. The Emperor protects no one. He cannot protect himself. We have served a corpse for 10,000 years, and now we join him in death. The Voxcaster sparks and dies as I speak the final words, as if the machine itself rejects my blasphemy. In the sudden silence, I can hear my heart beating slower and slower, counting down to an ending that holds no promise of redemption. After the smoke clears, the rules return with the inexorable weight of imperial law. The curse of unbelief represents a Class Omega theological threat, requiring immediate exterminatus protocols for any world showing infection rates above 0.1% of the population. The mathematics are simple. Better to murder billions than risk the spiritual contamination spreading to other worlds. The Inquisition has authorized the use of virus bombs, cyclonic torpedoes, and in extreme cases, direct orbital bombardment to prevent the curse's spread beyond containable limits. These measures are not cruelty, but mercy. The infected cease to suffer when they cease to exist, and their destruction preserves the spiritual integrity of humanity's remaining faithful billions. Lord Inquisitor Vex Torquemada's directive, transmitted across all Imperial Vox channels, makes the policy clear. Let none mistake necessity for malice. We do not kill the infected out of hatred, but out of love for those who might yet be saved. Every world we burn is a prayer of protection for 10,000 others. Quarantine procedures demand that any individual showing signs of doubt decay be isolated within sealed chambers lined with blessed silver and sanctified ceramite. The infected must not be allowed contact with practicing believers, as their presence alone can trigger cascading faith collapse in entire communities. A standard isolation protocol requires subjects to be restrained with blessed chains and sedated with sacred oils to prevent them from speaking the poison words that might contaminate their guards. Astropathic communications from affected sectors are subject to immediate censorship, their contents reviewed by specially trained telepathica adepts who can detect heretical influence even in psychic transmission. These adepts, known as faith wardens, undergo extensive conditioning to immunize them against doubt contagion, their minds reinforced with psychic barriers that can withstand exposure to even the most virulent spiritual contamination. The process has a 30% mortality rate and leaves survivors permanently scarred by the experience of willingly touching the minds of the faithless dead. The Ecclesiarchy has established a network of faith monitoring stations throughout the Imperium, massive cathedral fortresses equipped with sanctified instruments capable of detecting spiritual decay before physical symptoms manifest. These installations, staffed by thousands of tech priests and battle sisters working in perfect cooperation, process millions of citizens daily through scanning rituals that measure the strength of their devotion through prayer response analysis and sacred text recitation. Citizens undergo mandatory screening every 7 days, submitting to tests that range from simple catechism recitation to complex theological examinations. The screening chambers are lined with blessed silver and adorned with relics of proven saints, creating an environment where even the slightest spiritual contamination becomes immediately apparent. Those who fail 3 consecutive screenings face immediate purification through blessed flame, not as punishment, but as the ultimate expression of the Emperor's mercy. Imperial Guard regiments deployed to curse-affected zones receive specialized training in faith warfare techniques developed by the Ordo Hereticus over centuries of combating spiritual threats. Standard loadout now includes consecrated weapons whose machine spirits have been blessed by senior tech priests. blessed ammunition forged from silver mined on sacred worlds, and portable shrines for emergency spiritual reinforcement when faith wavers under the pressure of constant exposure to the infected. Commissars carry not only bolt pistols but also sacred texts, ready to execute summary judgment on any trooper whose faith wavers even momentarily. The penalty for expressing doubt in the Emperor's divinity has been elevated from standard heresy charges to immediate vaporization via melt-a-gun, the heat death serving both as execution and cremation to prevent the corpse from becoming a vector for further contamination. The Adeptus Ministorum has decreed that exposure to curse-infected individuals constitutes a form of psychic contamination, requiring extensive purification rituals that can last months or years. Citizens who survive contact with the faithless dead must undergo 90 days of penitential isolation, subsisting on blessed water and consecrated wafers while reciting the litanies of renewed faith 10,000 times daily. The isolation chambers are kept at freezing temperatures to prevent the comfortable numbness that might allow doubt to creep in during moments of physical ease. Those who complete the purification retain their citizenship status and receive the mark of the proven faithful, a brand burned into their forehead that identifies them as having survived spiritual contamination. Those who falter during the process join the infected they once escaped, their failure serving as a reminder that faith, once lost, can rarely be recovered. The purification centers report a success rate of 12%, with the remaining 88% requiring immediate incineration. A few things still work, though none are kind. The Ordo Hereticus has developed a series of preventive measures that can slow the curse's spread, though they cannot cure those already infected. The most effective technique involves preemptive memory modification using sanctified psychic surgery to remove any thoughts that might question imperial doctrine. The process requires strapping subjects to blessed surgical tables, while telepathic adepts burn away entire sections of their memories, leaving behind only the purest devotional thoughts. Subjects who undergo the procedure retain basic motor functions and can perform simple tasks, but their personalities are completely reconstructed around absolute faith in the God Emperor. They emerge from the process functionally brain dead, but their faith remains technically intact, preventing further infection. The modified citizens, known as the purified, serve as living examples of the Emperor's mercy. They can work, they can pray, they can serve, but they can never again doubt. Certain Space Marine chapters have proven naturally resistant to the curse, particularly those with strong traditions of mental conditioning and absolute loyalty indoctrination. The Iron Hands show complete immunity, their replacement of flesh with machinery apparently severing the spiritual connection through which doubt spreads. Iron Father Cardin's research suggests that the curse requires organic neural pathways to propagate, making the heavily augmented Marines effectively immune to its effects. The Imperial Fists demonstrate high resistance levels, their pain conditioning rituals creating mental bulwarks that doubt cannot easily penetrate. The chapter's chaplains report that their battle brothers can maintain faith even when directly exposed to the faithless dead, their minds fortress strong from centuries of discipline and self-denial. These chapters now form the Imperium's primary response force for curse outbreaks, their battle brothers serving as living shields between the infected and the faithful. The most brutal but effective countermeasure involves the systematic elimination of intellectual curiosity throughout Imperial space. The Scholastica Psychana has purged its libraries of any texts that encourage philosophical inquiry, replacing them with simple catechisms that promote unquestioning acceptance of revealed truth. Millions of volumes have been fed to the flames, their ashes mixed with blessed oil and used to anoint the foreheads of the faithful. Educational curricula now focus exclusively on rote memorization of approved doctrines, with critical thinking classified as a form of incipient heresy. Citizens who demonstrate excessive intelligence face mandatory lobotomization to prevent them from asking dangerous questions. The procedure, performed by sanctified tech priests using blessed instruments, removes the portions of the brain responsible for abstract thought while leaving motor functions and basic reasoning intact. Chemical prophylaxis shows promise in early trials, though the side effects remain severe. The blessed combat stim known as Sacred Fury contains psychoactive compounds derived from processed neuroglottis fluid, mixed with synthetic adrenaline and blessed amphetamines. The drug induces religious ecstasy while suppressing the neural pathways associated with doubt, creating a state of absolute certainty in the Emperor's divinity that can last for days. Subjects under Sacred Fury's influence experience visions of the God Emperor's glory, their eyes blazing with fanatic light as they recite prayers at superhuman speed. They feel no pain, no fear, no uncertainty, only the burning conviction that they serve the master of mankind. But prolonged use results in permanent brain damage and eventual psychotic breakdown as the drug literally burns away the neural tissue it was designed to protect. The Departamento Munitorum has approved Sacred Fury for emergency deployment to curse-affected zones, accepting its devastating long-term effects as preferable to spiritual contamination. Guard regiments equipped with the drug show remarkable resistance to curse infection, their unwavering faith serving as armor against the doubt poison of the infected. The fact that 90% of Sacred Fury users die within 6 months of first exposure is classified as an acceptable operational cost. The Adepta Sororitas have developed meditation techniques that can reinforce faith even in the presence of the infected. The ritual of iron certainty involves 17 hours of continuous prayer while subjected to carefully calibrated torture, the pain serving to focus the mind away from doubt and toward absolute devotion. Sisters undergo the ritual in blessed chambers lined with sanctified thorns, their bodies pierced by hundreds of silver needles while they recite the litanies of unshakable faith. The process pushes the human mind to its absolute limits, burning away all uncertainty through the simple expedient of replacing it with agony. Sisters who complete the ritual demonstrate temporary immunity to curse infection, though the process must be repeated weekly to maintain effectiveness. The Order of the Bloody Rose has lost 60% of its membership to the ritual's demands, but the survivors represent humanity's most spiritually fortified warriors. Perhaps most significantly, certain isolated Imperial worlds have achieved complete protection through the simple expedient of murdering anyone who asks questions. The hive world of Krieg Tertius maintains a zero-tolerance policy for intellectual curiosity. Citizens who demonstrate any form of independent thought face immediate execution by Flamer Squad. Children are monitored from birth for signs of excessive intelligence, with those showing dangerous potential subjected to corrective lobotomy before their 5th birthday. The planet's population shows no signs of curse infection, their absolute intellectual conformity serving as perfect armor against doubt contagion. But they have also shown no signs of technological or cultural advancement in over 2 centuries, their society locked in perfect stasis by the terror of thinking forbidden thoughts. Their cities remain functional. Their factories produce the required quotas, but they have essentially become a world of the living dead. Not infected, but no longer truly alive. The Krieg Tertius model has been proposed as a template for curse prevention across the Imperium, with several other worlds voluntarily adopting similar policies. The results are uniformly successful in preventing infection, but the cost in human potential is incalculable. Entire generations grow to adulthood without ever experiencing the spark of curiosity, their minds as barren as radiation-blasted wastelands. Step back far enough and the pattern refuses to blink. The curse of unbelief represents more than a plague or heretical outbreak. It exposes the fundamental fragility of the Imperium's spiritual foundation. For 10,000 years, humanity has survived in a hostile galaxy through the simple expedient of refusing to acknowledge that survival might be impossible. Faith has served as both weapon and armor, protecting billions from the crushing recognition of their cosmic insignificance. But faith built on ignorance remains forever vulnerable to the poison of simple questions. The curse spreads not because it offers compelling alternative answers, but because it strips away the comforting lies that make existence bearable. The infected do not die because they doubt. They doubt because some part of them recognizes the truth that the living refuse to see, that the God Emperor may be nothing more than a rotting corpse sustained by the daily sacrifice of 1,000 psychic souls. The Imperium's response to the curse reveals the true nature of its spiritual foundation. Every countermeasure involves the systematic destruction of human intelligence, curiosity, and hope. The most effective prevention methods transform citizens into living automatons, capable of faithful service but incapable of the thought processes that might lead to dangerous questions. The cure for doubt is not stronger faith, but the elimination of the capacity for doubt itself. In the quarantine zones, the infected shamble through ruined cathedrals where they once worshipped with genuine devotion. Their presence profanes the sacred spaces simply by existing, their doubt radiating outward like heat from a furnace. They serve as a reminder of what awaits those who dare to question the fundamental assumptions upon which human civilization rests. In their rotting faces, the faithful see a reflection of their own potential fate. Not death, but something far worse. The terrible clarity of absolute certainty that there is no hope, no salvation, no divine protection waiting beyond the stars. The curse of unbelief makes visible what has always been true, that the Imperium endures not through divine protection, but through the systematic suppression of human curiosity, intelligence, and the basic desire to understand the universe we inhabit. The God Emperor may or may not watch over his children from his golden throne, but the machinery of his empire demands their intellectual death as the price of their physical survival. Those who refuse to pay that price join the shambling ranks of the faithful dead, forever seeking answers to questions they should never have asked. The throne needs what it needs, and what it needs most is the willing blindness of its subjects to the possibility that their suffering might be meaningless. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, and the terrible recognition that some wars cannot be won, only endured through willful blindness to their cost. The faithful pray hardest when their flesh begins to rot, but their prayers rise into silence, and silence is all that answers back from the golden throne, where a corpse dreams of godhood while reality crumbles around him. Faith is the only currency that never devalues, but like all currencies, it can be counterfeited by those who know its true worthlessness.